What if I told you that sometimes the end is just the beginning? Before you click away, I want you to imagine this. A band at the height of their creative powers, silenced by tragedy, their story seemingly over, only to rise again when no one expected it. The tale of Blind Melon isn't just about a girl in a bee costume or the haunting voice of Shannon Hoon. It's about how music refuses to die, even when its creator does. If you've ever wondered what happens when the spotlight fades and the world moves on, stay with me, because Blind Melon's second act might be even more compelling than their first. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell right now, because we're about to dive into the resurrection story that the music industry doesn't talk about enough. How 4 musicians honored their fallen brother while finding their own path forward in a world that had already written their obituary. When Shannon Hoon was found dead on a tour bus in New Orleans on October 21, 1995, most music critics wrote the final chapter in Blind Melon's story. The charismatic frontman with the unmistakable voice had succumbed to a cocaine overdose at just 28 years old, leaving behind an infant daughter and a band that had only begun to explore their artistic potential. Their self-titled debut album had gone quadruple platinum on the strength of the unavoidable hit No Rain, and their sophomore effort, Soup, though initially met with mixed reviews, was already being recognized by discerning fans as a masterpiece of eclectic, boundary-pushing alternative rock. But with Hoon's passing, guitarists Roger Stevens and Christopher Thorne, bassist Brad Smith, and drummer Glenn Graham found themselves not just grieving a friend, but facing an impossible question. What becomes of Blind Melon without its voice and spiritual center? The immediate aftermath was exactly what you'd expect: devastation followed by dissolution. The band members scattered to various projects. Brad Smith and Christopher Thorne formed the band Unified Theory, while also establishing themselves as producers. Roger Stevens pursued his own musical path and even enrolled in law school, seeking a life beyond the spotlight. Glenn Graham kept a lower profile, occasionally surfacing for musical projects, but largely stepping away from the industry's glare. They remained bound by their shared history, but seemed determined to move beyond it professionally. Meanwhile, Blind Melon's legacy continued to grow in their absence. Music supervisors regularly licensed No Rain for commercials and soundtracks, introducing the song to new generations. More significantly, their deeper cuts began circulating among musicians and serious fans, who recognized the sophisticated songcraft and genre-bending approach that set the band apart from their 90s contemporaries. What few people realized during this period was that the surviving members occasionally reconnected, sharing demos and ideas, keeping alive the creative chemistry that had made Blind Melon special. There was no master plan for resurrection, just 4 friends who happened to make extraordinary music together, unable to fully let go of that connection. The turning point came in 2006, more than a decade after Hoon's death, when the band members were introduced to Travis Warren, a young singer-songwriter from Texas, whose vocal approach contained echoes of Hoon's distinctive style while maintaining its own character. What began as casual jam sessions quickly evolved into something more substantial. The chemistry was undeniable. Somehow this new voice fit within the musical landscape the band had created years before. The decision to reform Blind Melon wasn't made lightly. The band members understood the skepticism they would face and the inevitable comparisons between Warren and Hoon. But they also recognized something that outsiders couldn't: that Blind Melon had always been more than just its frontman. It was a unique alchemy of musical personalities, with Stevens and Thorne's intertwining guitars, Smith's melodic bass lines, and Graham's jazz-influenced drumming, creating a foundation that deserved to continue evolving. "We weren't trying to replace Shannon," Thorne later explained in interviews. "That would be impossible. We were trying to honor what the 5 of us had built together by continuing to build." With this perspective, they entered the studio to create what would become For My Friends, the first Blind Melon album in 13 years. Released in April 2008, For My Friends presented the reunited Blind Melon to a musical landscape that had changed dramatically since their heyday. The alternative rock revolution of the 90s had given way to the garage rock revival, emo, and the earliest stirrings of indie folk. Despite these shifts, the album demonstrated that Blind Melon's sound, that distinctive blend of psychedelic textures, folk structures, and rock energy remained remarkably vital. Songs like Wishing Well and Sometimes captured the band's signature sound while acknowledging their evolution. Critics approached the album with understandable caution, but many were surprised by how organic the new iteration felt. The album didn't set the charts ablaze as their debut had, but it accomplished something perhaps more important. It proved that Blind Melon could exist as a living, creating entity, rather than just a nostalgic memory. The road following for my friends wasn't without its complications. Warren departed the band in 2011, a separation that highlighted the challenges of integrating a new member into a group with such a specific history and chemistry. During this period, the band's activity became sporadic, with occasional performances but no clear direction forward. It seemed the reunion might be short-lived after all. But in a twist that few saw coming, Warren eventually returned to the fold, allowing the band to continue performing their catalog for audiences that included both nostalgic Gen Xers and younger fans discovering their music for the first time. These shows weren't massive arena events, but rather intimate club performances where the focus remained squarely on the music rather than spectacle, exactly the environment where Blind Melon's nuanced sound could truly shine. Perhaps the most powerful moment in Blind Melon's second chapter came in 2015, when Shannon Hoon's daughter, Nico, joined the band on stage to sing Change, one of her father's most affecting compositions. By then a teenager, Nico had never known her father, who died when she was just 13 weeks old. Yet there she was, standing in his place, her voice carrying his melody while the band played the same notes they had crafted with him 2 decades earlier. For attendees, it was an emotionally overwhelming moment that transcended typical concert experiences, a glimpse of healing, continuity, and the cyclical nature of both music and life itself. For the band members, it represented a full-circle moment that validated their decision to keep Blind Melon's music alive, rather than preserving it in amber. What makes Blind Melon's continued existence particularly meaningful is how it contrasts with the music industry's typical approach to band legacies. We've become accustomed to seeing beloved groups reduced to nostalgia acts, touring on the strength of decades-old hits without creating new material. Others rebrand completely after lineup changes, essentially becoming new entities that happen to play old favorites. Blind Melon has chosen a different path, acknowledging their history while refusing to be defined by it, honoring Hoon's contributions without becoming a tribute to them. This approach has allowed the band to maintain artistic integrity while evolving their sound, a balance few reformed groups manage to achieve. The influence of Blind Melon extends far beyond their commercial success. Their willingness to incorporate elements from disparate genres, psychedelia, folk, blues, even jazz, created a template that many later bands would follow. Their refusal to conform to the grunge aesthetic that dominated alternative rock in the early 90s demonstrated that authenticity doesn't mean fitting neatly into established categories. Artists as diverse as Fleet Foxes, My Morning Jacket, and even certain hip-hop producers have cited Blind Melon as influences, pointing to their unconventional structures and textural richness as inspiration. This cross-genre impact speaks to the band's musicianship and vision, qualities that transcend trends and continue to resonate with creators working in entirely different contexts. Beyond their musical contributions, Blind Melon's story offers powerful lessons about resilience and reinvention. The band members could have easily relegated their time with Hoon to memory, moving on to entirely separate projects without looking back. Instead, they found a way to honor that chapter while writing new ones, demonstrating that loss, while transformative, needn't be defining. In an industry often fixated on youth and novelty, their journey provides a template for artistic longevity built on substance rather than image. For musicians facing their own challenges, whether personal tragedies, commercial setbacks, or creative roadblocks, Blind Melon's persistence offers both inspiration and practical example. As we look to the future, Blind Melon's legacy seems increasingly secure, though not in the way one might expect. Rather than being remembered primarily for No Rain and its iconic video, they are increasingly recognized as sonic innovators whose influence runs through multiple generations of alternative music. Their catalog continues to be discovered by new listeners who approach it without the contextual baggage of the era, allowing the music to stand on its merits rather than its nostalgic association. Meanwhile, the reformed band continues to perform selectively, neither overexposing themselves nor disappearing entirely, a measured approach that keeps their music vital rather than turning it into mere spectacle. The story of Blind Melon reminds us that sometimes the most compelling narratives in music aren't about overnight success or spectacular flameouts, but about the quieter persistence of artists who create on their own terms, regardless of commercial trends or outside expectations. From their early days capturing lightning in a bottle with Shannon Hoon to their unexpected second act with Travis Warren, they've remained true to a singular vision while allowing it room to evolve. As Roger Stevens once put it, "We're not trying to recapture the past, we're trying to build on the foundation we created together." In an industry where authenticity is often claimed but rarely demonstrated, Blind Melon's journey stands as testament to what happens when musicians value the integrity of their art above all else. So, if you've connected with this story of musical rebirth and resilience, hit that subscribe button now and share this video with someone who appreciates bands that refuse to compromise their vision, even in the face of tragedy. And let me know in the comments which Blind Melon song speaks to you most deeply and why. This is music that deserves to be discussed, debated, and most importantly heard, not as a relic of the 90s but as a living, breathing artistic statement that continues to unfold.